Alright boys, so today I want to discuss with you an idea that I've been thinking about and I would like to see in the game, although I don't think it would be possible because it would replace the champion system, and I feel like the champion system is just so ingrained with our exotic weapons and armor and stuff, and every activity just seems to have champions now. But I would like to see that kind of replaced. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling kind of not sick of champions, but I would like to see them go away. I guess you could call that sick of champions, but I think that there could be a definitely much more intuitive and interesting system in place of the champion system. I started realizing that as our power level as Guardians grew, with the weapons now having origin traits, we have weapon crafting in the game, as well as all the subclasses getting the stasis treatment. We call it 3.0 with the aspects and fragments. We have stasis, Void has it, and Solar has it this season. Next season Arc is going to get it. I'm realizing that as we evolve as Guardians, the endgame content and a lot of the content in the game isn't evolving with us. And I don't necessarily mean mechanics. I think Valve Disciple has some really fun mechanics with the symbols and the memorization, and some of the boss fights are really unique. I'm not talking about mechanics, I'm talking about the moment-to-moment gameplay. It all just kind of feels the same. And here's where I would like to introduce Endgame 3.0, or just Combat 3.0, but I think specifically for the endgame, I think this would be really good for it. Now, this would have to take place after we get Arc 3.0 because I want to utilize these keywords, these verbs that we've been getting with all the new subclass updates. For Stasis, we have Shatter, Freeze, and Slow. For Void, we have Volatile, Weakened, and Suppressed. And for Solar, we have Scorched and Ignite. And just for this example, let's say that Arc gets the keyword Shock or Electrify. I would like there to be enemies that can only be dealt with or do more damage to if you have the specific keywords to deal with them. Let's say that there's a specific enemy type that you can only do damage to if you slow them or if you freeze them, right? Now this is kind of sounding like the champion system, but I think this would allow you to use whatever weapon you would like in the endgame or any content in the game right now, and it would also allow people to specialize in a specific keyword, and I think that's something that Destiny is really missing. I would love it if I was on my Titan and I was really built to spread Volatile on a lot of enemies. I'd be really useful for whatever type of enemies that you need Volatile for, and you could be almost like a specialist in Volatile. And the same thing can be said for all the other classes. Maybe the Warlock could be the best for Scorching with the new Snap Melee, or the Hunters can be really good for making enemies weak with the Smoke Bomb and dealing with those type of enemies. I think that this would allow for a lot more build variation, and you wouldn't have to really worry about what weapon you have to use because there's no champions. Now, I wouldn't make it so that way they couldn't be damaged if you didn't have the specific verb. I think maybe something akin to like maybe Match Game, just a little bit weaker, so that way you could still deal with them, but it would take just a lot more focused fire. I think that'd be really unique. I also would make these enemy types a bit more common than champions. I feel like they should just be your regular ads, the ones that kind of rush you, or the snipers that are in the back. Something where you really feel the impact from your moment-to-moment gameplay. Champions is almost like it's an encounter, like you have to deal with the champions, and I would just like to see that removed, especially when it comes to some of these nightfalls where you just have to get all the champions in order to get all the rewards, and some of these champions you can't even find them. It's just really upsetting to get to the end of the strike and you have gold and you don't get the maximum amount of rewards. If you just remove that system and replace it with this, that way your moment-to-moment gameplay felt so much more involved and engaged, and you really had to think, all right, there's some enemies that need to be made volatile over there, let me make sure I have my volatile abilities ready to go. And let's say that you don't have a fully maxed out build for it, you can still deal with the enemies as long as your teammates are coordinated with you, because they're not invulnerable if you don't have the specific verb to deal with them. Now again, this would take a massive overhaul of all of our exotics. For example, Divinity has Overload, and since there would be no more Overload champions in the game, it would have to be replaced with whatever the arc verbs are. So for example, let's say it's Shock, right? Let's say the Divinity spreads Shock on enemies, or if you target an enemy enough, it puts Shock on them, which would then allow them to be damaged or dealt with easier, because now that they are shocked, they can take more damage. Or another example would be the new Secant Filament exotic legs for the Warlock. They give Overload to anybody standing in your Empowering Rift. Let's say that they change it so now they give volatile rounds to all your void weapons if you're standing in Empire Rift. Now this would allow you to get volatile more easily, and it would kind of allow you to be more specialized in volatile. Now the only way for this to work is if they made stasis free to all players and any future subclasses free to all players, which will give everybody access to all the verbs that are needed within these subclasses, and it would take the pressure off getting a god rolled weapon for the endgame content and put the focus on how good are you at building into these specific keywords or these specific verbs. And since Bungie has been really trying to push Destiny towards build crafting, this would fit perfectly with that identity. Bungie would have to rework the seasonal artifact as well. Inside the seasonal artifact, there is a lot of champion mods, and since this new system would be replacing the champion system, those mods would become irrelevant. So they would have to replace those mods with mods that allow you to access other keywords while you're on a different subclass. So for example, let's say that you're on an arc subclass and you're built heavily into shock. And let's say that the mod states that the more you shock a target, eventually they will become scorched. This would allow you to access the solar keyword scorched while remaining on an arc subclass and using shock. Now yes, this would force you to use a specific subclass, but we already have something like that in the game right now, which is the champion system. It literally forces us to use specific weapons, and not everybody likes every weapon. Same thing with not everybody likes every subclass. So right now we have overload, auto, and SMG. I don't really like using that, even though I have been, but it's the same thing with bows. I hate using bows, and when it's overload bow, I'm forced to use a bow even though I hate using bows. But when it comes to a subclass system, I'm sure that you can make some kind of fun build with every subclass. Now I don't think something like this will ever be put into Destiny. I think the champion system is way too ingrained with all of our armor pieces and the endgame content. But if they were just to revisit that and maybe switch some things around and change it and shake it up a bit, I think it'd be really well received by the community. But if you guys like this content, please like, subscribe, and share. It truly helps me out a lot. You can also check out my other videos, links are in the description below, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. Deuces.